Welcome to Film Strip, movie reviews presented by Continuous Play Podcast. These podcasts are spoiler-filled as we discuss the plots, characters, and themes of the films in review. All content used or discussed in these podcast episodes is the property of the respective owners and used under the Fair Use Act, Section 504, C2, Title 17.
Welcome to Film Strip. I'm Jay.
I'm Brian.
I'm Ron.
And this is our review of Scream, starring Neve Campbell, Rose McGowan, David Arquette, Courtney Cox, Skeet Ulrich, Matthew Lillard, Jamie Kennedy, and Drew Barrymore. Written by Kevin Williamson and directed by Wes Craven. Released in 1996 on a budget of $17 million, grossed over $173 million at the box office, and reignited the slasher horror craze for about a decade. And boy, am I excited to be here to talk about the Scream series. We've been kicking this one around for a number of years behind the scenes. Brian, I think you and I mentioned it many moons ago back in the Art of Slaying days. And matter of fact, we had done one of the I Know What You Did Last Summers, but never got to Scream until now because I sort of felt like we needed to do some of the other staple franchises. Like, we had done Hellraiser at that point, but we needed to do Halloween, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. So we've done those now, and Scream seems like a good place to do. It's, it's a 4-part series that we can put in here in late spring, early summer, and get the band back together here to talk about some slasher horror stuff. So I want to ask you your memories of seeing this. Did you see it when it came out? All that kind of stuff. So Brian, what about you?
Well, I don't get around to movies very often, so I don't get to see a lot of them in the theater. But I do remember when this came out on back then VHS for me. I picked it up and we rented it right away. And just something that I heard was really good. It had Courtney Cox, who was big with Friends at the time, and my wife was a huge Friends person. And so we just decided to go out and find it, and that's really how I saw the thing. And then we liked it, so we waited for the next ones to come out and kept following the series up until the 4th most recent one, which I still have yet to see, so that'll be fun.
All right, Ron, what about you?
I didn't see it in the theaters. It was a VHS rental that me and my family watched over at my uncle's house because he was the only person we knew that had a big screen TV back in 1996 or whatever.
Well, was that like a 32-incher back then? So,
oh no, he had like an actual like 50-inch TV.
Oh, wow.
But it was one of those ones that was about 2 feet thick.
Okay.
Yeah, we had one of those too, actually. We had a big, I think it was a 55-inch TV, but it was massive and, yeah, heavy.
I bet those things weighed like 200 pounds.
They were heavy.
That's awesome. I had just about given up completely on horror movies at this point. I mean, I talked about on previous shows that I saw that 6 Halloween in a dollar theater, and at that point I knew, I was like, slashers are just dead. Like, I was getting into other things at that point, and I wasn't really going to see things that much. And I was dating somebody at the time who, this came out in December of 96, so right before winter break, and I'm like, I don't know, is that worth seeing? I mean, I watched a little bit of Party of Five. I knew who some of the people were, but I wasn't a huge fan of any of them. I thought Wes Craven, I don't know, he's kind of, I hadn't really seen him do much that I was just real jazzed about in a long time. And the person I was dating at the time was just like, absolutely not interested at all. So over holiday break, while she's out of town or whatever, right before it goes out of the theaters in our town, I'm thinking, you know what? I'll just go see it. I think I saw it for like $4 or something like that. And I remember being really like surprised by it. I'm like, man, that's a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I had it on VHS as well. I've owned it on DVD for a number of years. And I've seen it several times, but this is the first time I've gone back to it in a few years now. And I remember so much about the impact that it had at the time on pop culture, but also how like thick and chock full of those kind of references it was. I mean, this launched Kevin Williamson into the Nick Stratosphere. Dawson's Creek is a direct result of this. Halloween H2O got, pushed ahead because of this. A lot of other things happened because of Scream. And I mean, look, it made some of the people in this bona fide young up and coming movie stars at that point.
Yeah, I was just thinking as you were going through the introduction that this is a veritable who's who of the next big thing circa 1996, and basically none of them happened.
Well, I wouldn't say none of them happened.
Well, Courtney Cox was already famous. I mean, sure, David Arquette is a WCW World Heavyweight Champion, but other than that...
There you go. That's something.
Let's not. We've done an Arquette before, by the way, Ready to Rumble.
Yeah.
Let's not remember that.
I would say Rose McGowan took off after this, too, for quite a while, but, she didn't last forever, but she had a few things.
They tried to push Nev. She did some stuff I don't think any of it ever took, but it's a funny thing when you watch a movie that like tries to mint people, that makes them the next thing. And then the ones that actually make it and the ones that don't. Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard. I only know Matthew Lillard because he seems to be in Freddie Prinze movies, because they're friends.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Scooby-Dooby-Doo.
He's the only guy who's got like a steady career as Shaggy.
If there wasn't a guy born for a role, by the way, if y'all haven't seen the Scooby movies, I mean, he is perfect for that. He's like a living Shaggy. I thought of him at the time as like the TV version of Jim Carrey. Long, lanky, goofy, weird faces, can kind of switch on and off. Jamie Kennedy, you could argue too, has had a pretty steady career in the last 21 years. Well, and look, Drew Barrymore, I mean, at the time, like, she was coming out of rehab and was sort of the poster child for Hollywood child star gone wrong. This is what really put her back into the mainstream again. And I mean, she's had an incredible career since, and, producing and a big player in Hollywood. And this was the one that kind of got her out of the dumpster fire that she was in to do what amounts to the Psycho cameo in the movie.
Yeah, that's pretty. I guess that's fair. Maybe I'm too harsh on this movie and all the people involved.
I think looking back now, we don't see a whole lot of these people in anything these days, but they had decent runs for a while in certain things. I mean, Neve Campbell really, to me, has always been a TV actress, more so than a movie actress. And Rose McGowan did quite a few things, even as recently as the Sin City stuff. But her, to me, always, again, a TV actress. She went on to do the Charmed stuff for a couple years. Yeah,
did she replace Doherty on that show?
She did. She replaced Shannon Doherty as the half-sister or something like that. Courtney Cox, she was always big with Friends and whatnot, and she's done a few things. She's actually reinvented herself with that Cougar Town show for a while. I think that's run its course, but she's still in the mainstream. David Arquette is David Arquette. I mean, he shows up in weird spots.
Yeah.
But he's there. He kind of grew off the coattails of Courtney Cox too, though.
He's like the poor man's Crispin Glover.
Well, that's a good comparison. Yeah, he really is. Like he comes from, and Skeet Ulrich is certainly doing a good Johnny Depp impression in this, because I mean they so want him to be Depp. I think that's Wes Craven trying to reach out to Depp at that point, going, I'm just going to do one just like you, Johnny, but because he certainly plays a lot like that. But I've seen him in stuff, but he tends to like pick like really weird stuff to do. Like I think he's really picky about what he likes. But you guys have hit on it. A lot of these folks came out of television, and they were in a time when television wasn't the thing that, serious stars wanted to do. Nowadays, like if you're a Hollywood star, you want a good television show because you're more likely going to get something that's more critically acclaimed. You have better, parts. You can make the same money.
Lots of money.
Yeah, exactly. And you have longevity, whereas you may get one good film, even if you're in a franchise, and then it starts tanking, so, but this was different, and moreover, again, I can't emphasize enough like how dead slasher horror movies were, and really horror movies in general. I mean, I've always had a soft spot for them, but even then, there was nothing that anybody put any money in. I mean, Dimension here with the Weinsteins behind it, $17 million was nothing in 1996 for a movie. I mean, that was cheap. And now, I mean, back in those days, if you got 15 to 20 million out of a slasher movie, I mean, that's what, go back and look through our archives. That's what most of them were making. You had a good one. You know, the fact that this thing made $173 million tells you that it had staying power for a long time and really connected with a lot of people.
I mean, it did spawn 3 sequels, so.
And a television show.
I think the fact that it kind of poked fun at horror movies was the big deal.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. I mean, certainly the whole motif of this is different. And yeah, I guess we should say now, this also spawned a television series, which is on MTV now, and we're not going to be reviewing that. But Ron, I know you watch those and have done some written reviews of those. Your wife does too, right?
Yeah, Holly did the first season and I think part of the second season. And it's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
It's a good MTV horror anthology. It's almost like it's more like MTV's version of like Twin Peaks.
Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I got into watching that too, and it's incredibly gory, and it follows a lot of the same motif with also being very millennial in this generation. But I do find it fun to watch. We're not going to get into too much of that. We'll stick to the movies here, but I think if you're listening to this podcast and like you don't know what Scream's about, spoiler warning, I guess, at this point. But we're going to go ahead and do the plot summary. But I think most people are going to know what this is. But I venture to guess, just based on some teaser stuff I threw out on Facebook, it's been a long time since people have watched this one. So, Ron, why don't you jog everybody's memory? Give us a quick and dirty on what this first Scream movie's all about.
Woodsboro High School student Sidney Prescott is still getting over her mother's brutal murder from a year prior, where she was the star witness in the trial that sent local Cotton Weary to prison for the crime. As the morbid anniversary approaches, 2 classmates are killed and the town is gripped with fear, as tabloid journalist Gail Weathers posits her theory that Sidney fingered the wrong person and the killer remains at large. When a town curfew is instituted, many of Sidney's friends party at a remote house where the killer strikes again, with Gail and Deputy Dewey Riley in pursuit. It turns out Gail was right all along. The real killer, or killers in this case, are Sidney's boyfriend Billy Loomis and his best friend Stu. Billy's dad had an affair with Sidney's mom, causing his parents to break up. Stu, for no other reason than just to do it, went along with Billy on the initial killing and helped frame Cotton Weary. They even kidnapped Sidney's dad this year to make it look like he was the killer and they were the heroes. However, Sidney, along with help from Gail, turned the tables on the two and eventually both are vanquished. Sidney's dad is saved and Gail gets her story as credits roll.
All right, that's a good tight plot summary. And I want to start with something, not where the movie starts, but something that we started with in that summary there. The fact that we're at a year anniversary of her mother's murder and the trial of the century or whatever in this town, or guys, in 1996, like I know that's a trope for television, but I think at that point we were all hip to the fact that it takes a lot longer than inside of a year to execute a murder trial. OJ didn't go on trial that fast. And we had all seen that unfold. I'm such a true crime buff now. Like, that just stuck out to me watching this. I'm like, shouldn't it be like in the middle of the trial at this point? Like, it takes forever to get all of that kind of evidence together. And even if you have a quick confession, it takes a long time to get through the court docket. I don't know. It stuck out to me again. Maybe it's modern sensibilities. I bought it at the time, but I wanted to see if either of those things rung in your heads too, or if it's just me being an old dude that thinks way too much about this stuff.
I would say that it depends on how big this Woodsboro community is. If it's a really small town and they can move a little faster through justice, I don't know. But it depends on how high profile the case is. Who knows Sidney's mom? Is she really that big of a deal? It may be the crime of the century in Woodsboro, but everyone else in the state doesn't give a rip. It all depends on that.
Well, when I was in college, we had a guy who killed his dad and stepmom, and I actually knew the guy a little bit. But his trial was over in like a year, probably. But this is a town of about 2,000 or 3,000 people.
Okay,
so
that's fair.
The wheels of justice crush faster when there's no like.
There's not as many crimes to prosecute.
Yeah, this is supposed to be in Northern California, I think, but not like too Northern California, but not L.A., you know? Like, this is any town, America, California, but not a big place. Like, definitely white bread suburbia is where this is. That the Woodsboro, obviously a fake place, but I sort of took it as, I don't know, maybe the size of that town where Laurie Strode went and hung out to be a fake teacher for a few years, or like Sunnydale. You know, we don't have a lot of town, but it's over here, but without the Hellmouth, obviously. So there's not a lot of people. And so you guys bring up a good point. Maybe in that town, there's not that much to do. They seem to, I mean, the police force here, this is the other thing, they're oddly enough efficient. Like, they seem to blow through evidence and investigate LUDs on cell phones and all that stuff really quick, especially for the 90s. So I guess we can put that
Probably
there.
don't have a lot to do.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're right. I mean, we meet deputy duty, of course, but we spend some time with the sheriff too, and we see that there are other deputies. So they have enough to have 4 or 5 people in a police force. I mean, it's not just 2 people. It's not Barney and Andy, but I guess they have enough. It just sort of hit me. I thought, can you do that inside of a year? I guess it would. But anyway, we open up though, man. I think this is the thing. If anybody remembers anything about this movie, besides the ghost face mask and all that stuff, I think it's this opening, right? The girl in the house alone getting the phone call, and it's the wrong number, and then he calls back, and the whole taunting and back and forth, and it's replaying the scene from the first act of When a Stranger Calls, if either of you have seen that. Anna and I reviewed that years ago, and I think this movie, again, is being really self-referential with itself. I mean, you get a Friday the 13th drop, a Halloween, you get a joke at the Nightmare on Elm Street series in this, but a lot of it is stemming from that When a Stranger Calls. So this opening scene still works in spite of the fact that the technology dates it so badly. Not only do you remember having a house line, guys, remember cordless telephones?
They were the bomb.
And
they just get started around that time in households, you know.
I think my family had that phone. Like, I remember, that was also the one Paul Heyman used to carry around to the ring, I think.
No, Paul Heyman had a very different phone, but I remember, we got our first cordless phone probably when I was in high school, so that'd be right around this time. I remember in middle school having to sit in the middle of the hallways with the long telephone cord run up as far as I could get so people couldn't hear my conversations. So, cordless phones were fairly new at this point.
Yeah, we were fairly early adopters of the cordless phone, but it was still, we had one cordless phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's neat. That and the Jiffy Pop on the stove. That's the one thing that
Jiffy Pop.
Yeah, I remembered that, but like in 1996, I think we had graduated to microwave popcorn. And I know why it's theirs, because you got to have the fire. At some point,
but you understand that microwave popcorn was around, but there's those purists who don't want to use microwave popcorn. It's not the same.
Well, and true. And also, who knew that Jiffy Pop had like kerosene in it? Because holy cow, that's a fire. I mean, maybe the butter's that flammable. I've never tested it, but it did make me
you cook anything for that long and it'll burn.
Yeah, I guess so. Watching it, it made me, it did the subliminal job. Like, it made me wish I had a little thing of Jiffy Pop, you know?
You know, I don't think I've ever had Jiffy Pop, but it made me think of, like, if you're cooking something on the grill and the grease catches fire on top of the aluminum foil, how it doesn't go out.
Yes.
So maybe that's just what caught fire, like the butter is what was burning.
Yeah, I think so. So I think it's funny that we are focusing so much on the peripheral here when what's happening is it's a one-person monologue performance for 99% of it. I mean, they had the voice actor off screen doing the lines with her and stuff, but mostly this is Drew on that phone doing the back and forth. And I got to tell you, I think the scene works so well because it's balanced enough to where it starts off kind of weird, and then it's funny, and then it's creepy, and then it really gets creepy with that whole I want to know who I'm looking at thing, and then it really gets sinister fast. And I think it still works so well, the cat and mouse that's being played here.
It's definitely the thing that, I mean, as we talked about, it's the thing that everybody remembers from the movie. It's definitely this was Kevin Williams' elevator pitch for this movie. This was his 5-minute, this is what the movie's about pitch. It has to be because it works so well. It's super meta, it's scary, it's funny, it's got all the elements that go into the finished film just in a little, we can show this to distributors kind of 5-minute segment.
And it's got a gory kill section in it too for both of these. Like Steve gets gutted on screen, which is, at the time, you didn't see that in horror movies. That was a very gross and graphic shot for the 2 or 3 seconds it's on screen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you did, but you didn't see it in a big studio movie.
Good point. Yeah, you're right. This wasn't the kind of thing that you would expect from the big studio movie. And I think that's one of the things that changed the game here, because this is years before we get Saw and Hostel and all that kind of stuff. So in reigniting its slasher craze for the 9 or 10 years that the Scream wave of slashers came out, one of the things they all have in common, besides being uber meta, are the ones that were rated R had a lot of blood and a lot of guts in them. There's a lot of gore and red flying across the screen here. What's neat to watch about these movies, and all the Scream movies share this in common, they're all mysteries. It's all whodunits, right? But once you've seen it and the cat's out of the bag, rewatching it is all about, for me, watching to see, can I figure out who's where? And so I wanted to ask both of you, which one of our killers is where and doing what during this time?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, I would imagine it's Billy though on this part.
I think
it had been so. It had. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. Go.
It had been so long since I've seen it, I had forgotten which two of the bland white dudes were the murderers. So for half of it, I was like, all right, is that Skeet Ulrich? No, that's not Skeet Ulrich. Is that Jamie Kennedy? Well, that's clearly Matthew Lillard because he still looks like SLC Punk. But who's that other bland-looking cracker?
I think that's part of the fun in this. What I didn't realize until watching it and then doing a little behind-the-scenes look on this is how many times Ulrich and Lillard are actually in the costume. They're doing the part, and anytime it's kind of the goofy waving the arms around person, that's usually Matthew Lillard, which yes. or basically Shaggy as the thing. And in this one, and I mean, there's a billion theories online, so I'm just going to give you my thoughts. I think Billy's on the phone here, and I think Matthew Lillard is the one doing the knife work. Because he's the one that kills Steve, goes around to the front, and then Billy's the one that throws the chair through the glass door, which, by the way, heck of a throw. I don't know if you guys have ever tried to break a sliding glass door, but you got to have some help to get a deck chair through it on the first try. That didn't work that way. But I thought, Lillard was the one doing the killing too on this one too, because he has that drop line later about how Casey had dumped him, and so that would make sense for him to kill her. But it doesn't really matter. It's just an interesting way to watch it. Because, again, when the whodunit's spoiled, the fun in the rewatch is trying to figure out who's where when, I think. And so we can talk about that more. But, boy, what a gruesome set of kills here, too, because it's Drew Barrymore getting stabbed from behind. She gets drugged through the yard, and her mom and dad show up to see the house, kitchen on fire and all this crap going down. And her mom picks up the phone to hear her daughter being killed on the other end of the line. I mean, what a horrible thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
It
Pretty
makes
gross.
me think. It made me think of the Halloween kill.
Oh,
where,
the one where
she's
Jamie
on the
Lee's listening to the
she's
phone.
on the phone with Jamie Lee Curtis, and it made me think of that for a brief moment. But it's interesting how much this kind of takes its general plot from like all those Italian giallo movies, because they're all like bloody, rapey mysteries. Not that there's like a ton of rape in this, but
Yeah. There's a lot of sex.
The image of a guy holding that kind of knife is like, that's the go-to knife for every, Mario Bava movie made from 1965 to like 1994.
Yeah, I got a House by the Cemetery feel off of this a little bit, and a little bit of like Suspiria style stuff and things like that. Maybe not the complete weirdness that is Suspiria. That may be another day, though I'm dying you to talk about that, but because that movie is really strange, but especially nowadays. But yeah, I think the other thing here, and it can't be denied, is I think Kevin Williamson is a huge fan of the original Halloween, because so much of this movie is paced and built like Halloween.
This is like the first movie written by someone who has had access to like a video library.
Yeah.
It definitely, this feels like a turning point in like, you didn't just see the movies at like the dollar theater anymore. You could go and rent everything you want to see on VHS. And this definitely feels like a synthesis of, the previous 20 years of horror from around the world, brought in for a new hip generation.
Well, think about it too. I mean, this is the era of Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino and like these indie self-referential directors who had seen everything and then just started putting all of that stuff in their movies. I mean, I think Pulp Fiction has as much to do with the fact that this movie got made as anything else, because of the success that had, and the tone of that script is similar to this one. I mean, I think Williamson wrote something that was very meta along those lines. Just not as many F words, but he's got enough in there to go with it. But I felt like this owed a lot to that style of film that was popular at the time too. I mean, they're not aping Leprechaun 3 on this movie, that's for sure. So, what do you make, though, of the scene right after? We get Neve Campbell hanging out in her bedroom, and the boyfriend stops by the window, And, like, this movie it should be called The Red Herring Part 1, because it wants us to think, oh, it's this guy. No, it's this person. It could be this person. Maybe it's this one. But this is like that lesson of, hey, the first instinct's probably the right one. And we see Billy come by, and they have that whole really weird conversation about where their relationship is. He says it's like the TV version of The Exorcist, and I'm like, what in the hell does that even mean? Very strange.
Yeah, that feels like that feels very much like an artificial reference to me. Like, that doesn't feel like a natural. It feels like that's one of the rare, like, one of the missteps I think of the movie is that it definitely feels like a bunch of teenagers in a movie.
And that know they're in a movie
witty.
too.
Yeah.
And Billy in particular, because in the end, when he's doing his big reveal of this is why we did it, we watched a lot of movies, we took a lot of notes, Stu says that too. And when you watch this movie again, knowing that he's the killer and his motivations and stuff, you see him saying things like, well, I guess that's why you would say that, because you probably have been watching it. But I'm like, what in the H would you two get out of watching The Exorcist? You're not going to conjure a demon to help you do this. That's maybe that's in the third one. I don't remember. But I mean, it wasn't like they were, that could be useful to you. It's not the kind of movie you watch. Yeah, I mean, there's like no religion in this town and to speak of at all. So I don't know. It's that was a weird metaphor, but it's the thing Kevin Williamson is known for, that meta referential, and unlike some movies where there's always a character that is the voice of the screenwriter in there, I think everybody at some point is the voice of the screenwriter. So this is Billy's moment to do it, but they do have that very all of that is there, obviously, to set up that there is friction in the relationship because, doggone it, Sydney just needs to get over it and put out, right? That's what he says to her, which, what a loser.
Well, it sounds to me like they had a sexual relationship until Mommy died.
Well, I think he says, like, they were going hot and heavy, like they had maybe gotten to second, heading toward third base, and then all of a sudden the freeze play was on, and he's been stuck on first ever since.
Right. I think that's exactly. Well, I don't know how far they got beforehand, but I think that's exactly kind of what happened. Is that they were getting into it, and then Mommy got killed, and everything's been cold since then.
Yeah, I mean, because God forbid a relative being murdered brutally derail your sexual hijinks as a 60.
How could they? Right.
Yeah, the trial's over.
Insensitive bastards.
I know, right? But I mean, that's their whole thing. But it's all the setup again to get us started in this. And we get the drop with Sydney's dad's going out of town, and then she flashes him, and he's like, oh, you're such a D, whatever. And I remember though having Neve Campbell was the girl next door in the 90s. It was like, oh, hubba hubba. So I thought she was way way hot and cute, and I was interested. So I was like, oh, I can see this. I'm digging. So it's it works. I mean, again, it's all a setup. If you know it, you watch it and you go, yeah, obviously Billy's involved in this. I'm curious and to hear from either of you, and you just throw it in there when you can admit it. When did you know, or did you know and recall knowing there's got to be more than one person doing this? Because I didn't see that coming until when they reveal it. The first time watching this, I remember thinking, oh, gosh, of course. But you watch this movie now, and it's like there's no other way this could work unless there's more than one person involved.
I never realized it. Yeah.
And I love tabloid journalism happening here in front of us, right? Like, you've got all of these people camped out at the school wanting to interview every kid about what's it like to go to Slaughter High and all this stuff going on, and we meet Tatum, the best friend, Rose McGowan here, and she's filling Sydney in on all the lowdown of how Casey and Steve got killed. And this is when we meet Gail Weathers, our Inside Edition-esque reporter girl here, right? Like, that's what this is supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Do y'all remember these shows, like when they were happening at the time, like Sally Jesse Raphael and Ricky Lake and Maury before he started doing paternity tests?
Well, those were talk shows. Inside Edition was your it would be like Entertainment Tonight, except for working on the shady side of things. Do you remember who hosted Inside Edition?
Wasn't that Bill O'Reilly at one time?
Heck yeah, it was.
Yeah. There were a lot of people that rolled through the Inside Edition set, if memory serves.
Oh, yeah.
I took this kind of like a cross between that and like all the Geraldo Rivera investigates stuff, beyond Al Capone's vault and other failures that he had. But I mean, I could see this. I mean, it totally resonated. I'm like, yep, totally get it, And Courtney Cox here plays this so well. Like, she is such the ruthless, out to get the story out for number one, person. She's yelling at her cameraman to move his lard ass out of there and get the shot. And we have this confrontation between her and Sydney, and I love it. I mean, it's funny the way that you can tell Sydney hates this woman, like hates her.
It's quite obvious from the get-go, too. I mean, she does not hold anything back on her disdain for Gail Weathers.
Yeah, so Nancy Grace, as a fictional reporter, has modeled her career after a fictional reporter. That's a good pull. I hadn't thought about that. It really is. It's funny how that works. But, which, it would have been the most meta thing of ever is if Fincher had gotten Courtney Cox to play the Nancy Grace ripoff from Gone Girl. when they did that. I wonder if he even called her. Like, that would have been awesome, but they got somebody else to pull that off. But anyway, that would have could be. That's another discussion for another day. Because wow, that movie makes you feel awful. But this one leaves you with this whole, like, what would it be like to go to high school the next day after somebody had been brutally murdered? And again, it's played in a lot of ways for ups, but there's some scares here because, like, there's stuff going on, but there's no killing going on for about 35 minutes in this movie. And we get the obligatory, everybody gets called in to be investigated with the cops. And we meet Principal Henry here, the Fonz. Henry Winkler, which I got a huge kick out of. I mean, I loved the Fonz. Who didn't growing up, right? Yeah, I kind of think this is another thing that kind of threw Henry Winkler back into the pop culture. I don't know what he was doing in '96, but I don't know if people were thinking about him. But then he's been in a billion things since, and I know he's worked for a long time and was a working actor and producer and stuff. But I think this put him back on the map. And it is like there's times where, like, he's combing his hair, so I'm like, it's like the Fonz grew up and became a principal. It's sort of played that way. It's funny, but. That would have been too much. Again, there's a fine line in your meta film, like, where it gets to be too much, and that would have been one that crossed too far. So I got a question for you guys here, though, because we get a scene where Sydney, after her interrogation or whatever, goes to the bathroom, and there's the 2 or 3 girls standing around, the mean girls, who, like, just totally talk all that trash about her, which I'm convinced that, like, all the Mean Girl movie craze that came out modeled itself off of this scene, because, gosh, that is harsh, burn down of everybody. But beyond that, which one of the guys, who is it in the bathroom? Like, how did the killer, Billy or Stu, know I'm going to follow him to the bathroom and just kind of wait out for these other 3, twits to leave so that I can chase Sydney out the door? Like, that's the one chase in this that I'm like, that didn't make any sense. And I was watching it with my wife, and she thinks it's one of the killers, and I'm going, maybe that's just a prank, and it's just there to throw us off, because we've already seen kids pulling the prank in the costume.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a prank to me too. If only because that's the only way I can make any sense of it myself, because I don't know how 6.5 foot tall Matthew Lillard's going to sneak into a women's bathroom in a in a black dress and a ghost mask.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would think so too. I don't think that Billy would be waiting in the women's bathroom for her.
Well, no, I mean, these guys are in different places in scenes before, too, because Billy's had that confrontation with Sydney in the hallway about, why can't we have more sex? Well, then that comes later, too, but they talk about this stuff, and I don't know, it's just really, it's really weird how all that goes down. And I don't know, I feel like that is the joke. And come to find out, one of the things I found out in research was that the Weinsteins told Williamson, you need something to happen here. Like, Principal Henry was not supposed to die in the movie because he is another red herring that you think it might be him, especially after that speech he gives about your thieving, whoring generation should all die as he's scissor cutting up the mask. You're both expelled. And I'm like, holy cow, can a principal make that call? But like,
hell
they were like,
he can.
Well, yeah, well, we gotta have like something going. So they built this chase scene and then his death in there to have something happen, and maybe that's why it feels a little false that who's this random person running out of the bathroom after Sydney at that time. So we do get his kill though, and I gotta say I liked it. I didn't see him getting killed, so it was neat to watch him go down. And at the time I thought, man, this is one of these all bets are off. Like the pickoff in a slasher movie is always evident, but we're meeting people and then watching them die too, which generally is a ding on these kind of movies, but in this one, I don't know, it works.
I think it works because they feel more like actual characters than just fresh meat.
Right. They may build them up for a very slow period of time, but they do kind of give you a little build up to these characters more so than just slashing and killing them instantly, right? They give you some backstory and some character development before they axe all these people.
Exactly. So we go ahead though now to Sydney's going to spend the night with Tatum, and she goes home, and it's all on the news about her mother or whatever, so she falls asleep and wakes up in the evening, and the phone rings, and she gets her first call from the Ghostface killer, and she has that first interaction. And I gotta say, the Ghostface killer, whichever one it is at the time, Billy or Stu, takes a beating through this movie. Like, these guys get the crap kicked out of them by this
by
chick.
Sydney, right?
Several
what
times.
The hell?
Yeah, I know. Well, I took Sydney as the kind of girl that you didn't realize was also a black belt in Taekwondo. Or something like that. Like, she had picked that up along the way, and then just everybody forgot it.
Yeah, I mean, I liked this whole scene because she basically thinks it's a BS prank, and she goes, "I call your bluff," goes outside, stands there, and taunts basically this guy. I thought that was kind of cool.
It was good. And then a good chase through the house, too. And I had a question for you, Brian. She goes upstairs and eventually, barricades her door with her closet door so the killer can't get in there after her. But what is she doing on the computer? Isn't that like some hard of hearing software? She's dialing 911.
So I did some research because you told me that this might come up. And, Microsoft and Intel introduced telephone software in 1993 for the PC. So there is, as long as you're connected to a landline, there is a telephone software that you can use on your computer to call out.
Okay, very cool. Because this, to me, at the time, seemed like Star Trek technology. I was not on the internet heavy in 1996. I had an email account, and I think I knew what Yahoo was on a GeoCities frame rate page. But I didn't know anything else about this kind of stuff. I didn't know you could do this kind of stuff. So I did think this was kind of cool.
Neat too.
It felt to me, at least at the time, like one of those things that only exist in movies, like how in the net, how she orders pizza online. And how I thought, well, there's no way that kind of crap will work in real life, and yet here we are these days. Nobody calls the pizza place anymore.
Right,
dude. In my head, the theme song to Mozart's Ghost just ran through my memory banks off of the net. Wow, that's a Sandra Bullock gem from yesteryear. Goodness gracious. Talk about a movie that doesn't age well. But anyway, I do love, though, that she gets the upper hand here or whatever. She turns around, the killer's gone, and then Billy shows up through the window. And that, huge, Zach Morris 2.0 style cellular telephone drops out of his pocket. And my question to you two guys is, was this just to scare her, or were they trying to kill her? Because they make such a big deal out of the fact that they want to kill her on the anniversary. That's the next day. Are they just screwing with her at this point just to ratchet up the tension? And Billy actually allows himself to get arrested so that he can throw the scent off of himself later? Is that what's going on here?
I think that's probably very good observation, because he does have Matthew then make a call after he's been, I guess, booked in jail on suspicion to kind of throw him the scent off of his case. Yeah, I think that's exactly what's going on here, and they're just kind of playing with her, gauging her, and all that kind of stuff, getting her freaked out.
I think you guys are right. And we do get the great scene at the police station. And like I say, I like the fact that the cops in this movie are not the bumbling idiots or just completely absent from everything and don't believe what's going on. Like, they're doing good actual police work. Dewey's taking a statement. He's trying to get information. Even if as bumbling as he's supposed to be, he's doing his job. The other cops are pulling things. You got the chief investigating the cell phone calls. The dad is like, why don't you just look up the phone records? And he's like, okay, thanks, we'll get into that. But he's still playing hard to get, or tough cop with Billy. And you've got all of this stuff going on. And in the midst of it, of course, you've got poor Sydney over there, who has been harassed by Gale Weathers about fingering the wrong guy, Cotton Weary, for her mother's killing. And in the back of her head, like the way Neve Campbell plays this is like, am I doing this again? Did I get the right guy? Do I know? Like, we have this whole bit about that, and punctuated by a great bit of comedy when she says something about, I can't wait to read your book, and Gail's like, this is you a copy that she just, reenacted by Rose McGowan later, like, boom, bitch went down. Like that was awesome, the way she just knocked her out.
Now, here's a theory that I was working on. I don't know if they explicitly say it in the movie or not. Maybe you can correct me, but Gail got famous covering the mom's trial.
That's
right.
correct.
And that's the whole reason why Sydney hates her this whole time.
No. That's not the reason. The reason is that she's trying to help Cotton Weary get out of jail because she thinks he's innocent, and Sydney, in her mind, knows he's the one who killed her mom. That's why she hates her.
Yeah, she hates her because she spread all those BS theories. She says she drops that line at the school earlier, and then I think reiterates part of it here again at the.
Well, and the other fact that she's saying that Cotton Weary was having an affair with her mom, which makes her mom look bad.
Right, and that comes up a couple of different times in this movie, that Sydney has to come to grips with the fact that her mother kind of was the town slut, and I thought, but that's a great character thing there, because we never see what that would be like if you were the daughter of the town floozy who got murdered while she was cheating on her husband, and all this stuff. Like, how would you deal with that? Like, what do you say? I remember reading the Dave Cullen's Columbine book, and he talks a lot about the parents of the two killers and what they went through, and not to elicit sympathy for them, but just to say that, they had a complete public shaming as well. And what would that be like for you if that was the rumor going around? She has that whole conversation with Tatum on the front steps. It's like, how many times can you hear something and not think it's true? A lot of people say that about your mom, and I don't know. I like that whole bit. And I think it gave her a good reason to not like Gail, because again, I don't think Gail's famous yet. I think she's trying to get famous, and she thinks this book is going to launch her. And what she's trying to do is get something so she can get Cotton out of jail, because that will make her super famous. I mean, she's well known because Dewey watches her on television.
They all watch her.
We lay that out. Yeah, everybody knows her, right? But she's not the mega famous.
She's trying to get on the national
she wants
stage.
To be. Yeah, she wants to be Barbara Walters, basically. And host whatever the precursor of The View was. So
2020?
As it goes. Yeah. Well, maybe so. So, we get the town curfew here, and, so long Principal Hembry, of course, it has happened. And we get this great scene, though, where Billy gets out of jail. And he and Stu and Randy, we hadn't talked about Jamie Kennedy yet, run into Randy where he's working at the video store. And I mean, I'm watching that video store scene first thing, and I'm like, oh, memories. Remember going in just aisles of VHS tapes,
I missed
guys?
the video store, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, this definitely caused some video store nostalgia for me, especially because I worked in a video store for a while.
No way. I did not know that.
Yes, in 2000. So there were still,
wow.
I was right there where VHS started to be phased out and DVD started to come in.
Yeah, I mean, you see all the boxes he's putting on the shelf, and everybody's in the store, because I can remember being in towns where bad weather was supposed to be coming in, which, as Brian can go ahead and laugh, in the South that means that we're going to shut down and everybody's going to die and snow apocalypse. But one of the things people would do is they would go to the video store and just rent it out, because you figure you're going to be stuck at home for a few days, and who wants to watch the news all the time? You watch a bunch of videos, and so I get it. But I love the scene we have here between these three guys, because you get Matthew Lillard and Ulrich doing this whole psychological game on Randy. And I got to tell you, it has always struck me as weird the way Lillard kind of lays on the back of Skeet and stuff. Isn't that, it's just a little strange.
Yeah, it was a little, it was slightly uncomfortable.
Well, I mean, are they trying to say something is going on there, or is he just being a goober and a goofball and there's nothing to worry about?
I think they're just making fun of him because he's such a huge movie guy. I think they're just making fun of him.
Mm-hmm. Well, man, I love how they turn it on him because as an audience member, you listen to that and Randy even tells you, you're right. I would be the first suspect if this were a movie because I'm the guy who watches all the horror movies. I seem to know all this stuff. He's dropped lines for that.
He'll drop more.
And it's supposed Yeah, exactly. He'll drop more and more and more, and he'll be, the rule giver here in a little while at the house. But I don't know. I thought it was it's odd to watch those two together because again, you watch this movie in retrospect, knowing that they're the killers, and you see them, and this is sort of the precursor to what will be that kitchen.
Even that still kind of feels oddly uncomfortable. It gave me flashbacks to the movie Bully for some reason.
Okay.
I don't know why. I think just because there's such a clear power dynamic between the two of them where, Stu is obviously not the one in charge.
Right.
So I think that might have been, part of it.
I want to ask you this now because it'll come up later in the kitchen, but I'm going to skip ahead for now. I've always thought that there's two people here, but I think Billy's intention all along is he's going to kill Stu and leave himself standing alone.
Absolutely.
As the hero, right? Okay. I think you both have hit on the power dynamic thing, Ron, especially with what you said there, because you can tell the brains of the operation and the driving force is Billy. Well, and I'm saying this knowing what the plot twist of the third movie is. So just based on what I've seen right now, I'm to believe Billy is the one behind this. So everyone put down your comment on the thread. We'll get there. But anyway, we go to the party at Stu's now, and you have Gale show up and trying to figure out what to do, and then Dewey shows up too. And I like that they have like the little meet cute part 2 thing, and they start to see some sparkage there. I thought Courtney Cox and David Arquette had good chemistry. I mean, it is why would the 10 ever go for the doofy guy like that?
In real life too.
That happens. Yes. So, I mean,
it
really,
happens,
like that's
man.
the funny thing is, it does happen. And, but I liked that though, because again, that's something that seemed like something that became the plot of how many different teen rom-coms in the 90s and early 2000s. It was like every other one.
My favorite part of this whole thing was the fact that you had the cops knowing that this party was going on, attending the party and not doing a thing about it.
Well, even he says it's like you're just some kids cutting it loose. Like that reinforced to me like how small a town this really was. And how old Dewey is. I mean, Dewey's maybe 22, he says he's 25, right? So he's not that much older than all these kids. And so you get the sense that he's still kind of doing what he did in another Drew Barrymore movie where he tries to relive high school glory, right?
Yeah, pretty much. He's the old man now, right? Everybody knows Dewey. They kind of think he's a dork, which he kind of is, but yeah.
But they walk around the party, but I love Gale and her cameraman's little slide thing here where she slides that camera, into next to the video recorder so that they can get the loop of what's going on inside. And like, it's so convenient that the television's angled at just the right way where you can get that full pan of the living room.
Of course, but what's with the delay? Why is there such a delay?
I took that only as it's going off a radio frequency signal, so there's going to be a delay in it. Like
I
it's
suppose
not
wireless was still very new at that point. Well, except for with the moon and whatnot.
Well, I mean, it is. There's a delay in the moon, like the astronauts that are traveling places. The message is going back and forth. We're on a delay.
That makes
anything
sense. They're
that far
millions
away
of
has
miles
delay.
away.
Well, yeah, but even on that kind of a shortwave radio frequency, they wouldn't have the license at the time to have anything more powerful than that because it would freak out all the other electricity and electrical systems in the area. And 2, you would have to have like special training to be able to get those military style stuff that goes more than, the 20 feet they had between the door and the side. I totally bought that. The part of that is me being at the time the radio, television, journalism student. Like I totally understood what he was talking about. Like, yes, there would be a delay. Maybe not that long on one, but there would be.
But they're a news crew who does live news feeds. They have the equipment to do live stuff.
Yeah, but they're not at a place where they're plugged up to run the dish.
They've got the truck.
But they weren't using like their full size camera. They were just using some like off the shelf, spy store crap.
Webcam.
I mean,
or maybe
like last night I watched a fireworks display, and I heard the sound of the fireworks going off before the fireworks were on my TV. And this is 2017, and the fireworks were literally down the street from me.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are still delays and things now. I mean, for whatever reason, I could be watching something on the TV downstairs, and my wife could be watching the same thing on the TV upstairs. And if I'm on cable and she's on the antenna, then there's going to be a delay between the two screens.
I mean, look, I was outside of Jordan-Hare Stadium when Auburn returned to the kick on Alabama in 2013, and I knew Auburn had broken free and scored 5 seconds before I saw it on the television. I watched it on, and I was just outside of the stadium at a tailgate spot. So we still have that today. I mean, I get it. It makes sense.
Yeah, I get that. But there's also mandatory delays on live stuff, too.
There are, but I took it as this is also a plot convenience because we have to have some way of giving the killer the advantage. If we're going to let these people have the spy cam, then there's got to be a delay in it so that they can somebody can get killed when they don't see it coming. And it turns out to be the camera guy later because he's like, oh, crap. And then he turns around and he gets his throat slit.
Plus, I mean, how good of a camera guy do you think Kenny actually was?
Yeah, he's always eating Cheetos. Like he looked like he was smoking a spliff on the side too. Like he was always having the munchies. Maybe
the way
she's already had
to
get
deal
on
with her, he probably was.
I mean, maybe so. Maybe she was tough to work.
Well, you saw her. All she did was chew him out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, constantly. Well, okay, we've got to talk about Tatum's kill in the garage here. This is the second moment where I felt like we had a character spewing out horror references to stuff when she would have no business nor reason to be the kind of person that would know a movie like I Spit on Your Grave, or whatever. Like I Spit on Your Garage, and that gave me like
I don't
shocking,
know.
I mean, thoughts.
I think that we're to understand that this town watches a lot of horror films.
Yeah, I needed that. I mean,
isn't she like?
Too?
Well, she gets she gets all her references wrong, doesn't she?
How so?
Like, she gets, doesn't she say like an Elm Street? Is there like an Elm Street reference that she makes where it's wrong?
Oh, she does the Wes Carpenter flick.
Yeah,
she does that.
So I think she just has been hanging out with Randy too much and overhears these third-hand references to things that she doesn't actually see because it's established, at least earlier in the movie, that she doesn't actually watch any of the horror movies.
Right. I mean, she's... Again, I think Tatum is supposed to be like the more slutty best friend.
She is,
right?
yes, most
that's
definitely.
who she's supposed to be. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty clear, right? I mean, even just the way she dresses, you can see
the way she makes out with Stu in the hallway and everything else.
Right, and like he's carrying her upside down as they walk down the street, and she's in that midriff shirt and all this stuff. I mean, she's definitely got a little bit of that bad girl stuff going. So I guess I get it, but I like the fight that she puts up here in the garage because we're to presume this is Billy because Stu's inside being party host.
Well, yeah, he's not going to kill his girlfriend.
Yeah. Well, no, but he knows it's going down. That's why Billy gives him that little nod when he shows up at the door in like 5 minutes or whatever. But I liked the way she, she fights back or whatever. The killer gets beer all spilt all over him, and then he kills her with the cat door though, which I don't know about you guys. Like I've never had a garage door. My dad's got one, and like that thing can barely lift itself. I don't know that it could lift 108-pound Rose McGowan, nor do I think the front half of her could fit through it like that.
I mean, she could probably wedge herself through it if she really tried hard. But you're right. There is not a garage door opener that's ever been made that can lift a person off of the ground. I mean, yeah, because, my parents have had garage doors, and we had to get, like, a more powerful garage door opener because we had a big aluminum, 3-car garage door. So we couldn't just use, like, the standard one. We had to get, like, one for real garages.
Yeah, he's not the Sears Craftsman model doing that job. The smart thing this movie does, though, is when the killer goes back inside, opens the door, and you hear like the party raging in the background. Because the whole time I'm going, how in the H does nobody hear this garage doing
Well,
this?
it's on the back end of the
and
house.
all this
so.
stuff. Well, that, and I do think the party's raging inside, but like that sound is looped in there for a reason. It's because for anyone who might go, wait a minute, why can't anybody hear this? Oh, that's right, because she's getting it this way. It's pretty quick cut, but a really awful way to see her head get crushed like that too.
Yeah, it's a great effect. I enjoy that.
Billy shows up at the party as everybody else, or most people, are starting to bail out and leave, and they're getting ready to go and all this stuff, and you've got Sydney and there, of course, and she's trying to figure out what happened to Tatum, and Matthew Lillard's all like, why don't you two go use my folks' room and you could talk, like he's trying to make it happen or whatever. And that's another trope from like 80s slasher films, is everybody always tried to get it on in like the parents' bedroom, and I'm like, who in the hell wants to do that?
Shit, right? Ew.
I mean, of all places. Yeah, it's very... But anyway... while they're going off to do that, though, we do get the scene as it's happening in between here. Randy gives the rules of the horror movie. And it is, again, a moment when a character steps out and is going to tell the audience, you need to be paying attention because all of these things that I'm going to tell you are about to happen in front of you.
Shit.
And it's when this movie becomes super meta.
I like this scene. I thought it was kind of fun that he goes through the whole thing like everyone's there getting drunk, and he's like, you don't know the rules? You can't do this. Oh, that just happened. You can't do that. Oh, that just happened. Oh, you can't do this. Oh, shit, that just happened.
Well, yeah, it's like, no drugs or drinking, and everybody's like, whatever, and he clanks beers with somebody. It's like, no sex, and that's like the scene they cut away, and Sydney takes her shirt off, and it's like, okay, so it's all these pieces, and then Stu, of course, gets up to go do the fake kill on Billy, but it's like, don't say I'll be back, I'll be back, and all that crap. So I think it's funny, though, that I got this whole New Nightmare flashback to me where Craven is laying out the rules of the horror movie to Heather Langenkamp, and we talked about it when we reviewed that, Brian, that in a lot of ways is considered to be sort of Wes Craven's dry run at this type of horror.
Yeah, we did mention that when we did the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and I think you're right, but I think it's just a good play on horror movies. I mean, what are the most common things that happen in horror movies? Here they are, so don't do them.
But in the fact that, like, you have a horror movie now that is populated with people who know the rules and are going to break them.
Because it's a horror movie.
And yeah, but the stuff is still going to happen to them. That's the I guess, part. Is that the irony they're going for here?
Absolutely. I mean, it is a joke on horror movies in a horror movie. Right? So they're going to tell you, oh, don't do this, and then we're going to do it on the movie. Because it's not supposed to happen, right? So just showing you how silly horror movies are.
I always wondered, Principal Hembry, how he's splayed out on the goalposts or whatever, was he planted out there specifically to get everyone to leave the party?
I would say yes.
I think so. Yeah, because there's got to be somebody who makes that call or whatever, right? Like, does Randy say? I always thought like that's Stu calling saying he's somebody else, and that'll flush the crowd.
A kid comes running in.
No, it's the phone rings and Randy picks it up.
Right.
Yeah, so that's who answers the phone at somebody else's house, by the way. That's another. I guess that happened before. I would never do that, but anyway. So
exactly.
Yeah, really. Like I don't have a phone at my house too. If you call me now and I don't recognize the number, I ain't answering.
Exactly.
So that you're going to the block list quick. So thanks, Obama.
Google the number.
Anyway,
if it comes up in 800 notes. gone.
Yes, exactly. It's like it's the first thing I do. But you know what? That's the thing too. This movie popularized caller ID. Like I saw something that like caller ID usage went up by like this exponential amount after this movie came out. And I do remember like my parents got caller ID at their house after this time.
Well, it started to get big after this time. I mean, I would say 96, 97, 98 is the start of caller ID. But everybody had it by 98.
I gotta say, I don't necessarily want the gore or whatever, but did either of you want a cutscene of Principal Henry?
No.
You know, on the like, what are those kids hoping to see at that point if that really is the cops? Like, they're not going to leave that up. That's why, again, I think it's
well, of course they're going to leave it up as they're processing the scene.
Yeah, but I mean, look, they're going to let anybody get near it.
Well, of course,
like,
nobody's going to be allowed to get near it, but that's the whole thing. If you got 100 students coming at you at once, how are you going to stop them all?
Well, and you don't have to be that near if you've got a pair of,
binoculars.
Yes, those things.
A telescope.
Well, and I'm forgetting. I was driving down the interstate today, and everything came to a crawl just so we could all slowly go by the wreck and look.
That happens all the time, right?
Yeah, is that we must
Docker
see
effect,
the carnage, I guess. There you go. That's a good point. So we get Billy and Sydney having this whole thing where she's like, you know, like she still suspects him in some way, and then of course the killer shows up and stabs him, and we think Billy's dead, right? Like this is the ultimate fake out of all of this stuff. And this is when all hell breaks loose. Like the camera guy gets toasted. Gail runs off with him bleeding all over the windshield. She has that huge wreck. You got Sydney running around the house. She's beat to hell at this point. Dewey gets stabbed in the back. And, I mean, it's a gruesome 5 minutes here as the kills the bodies start piling up with the kill count here.
It is the climax scene, right? Everything goes down.
Well, it's heading toward it, yeah. Yeah, it's heading toward what will be the climax. You're right. In the standard slasher movie, this is the climax where the pickoff gets really quick before we get to Final Girl and Killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot going down, but there had to be for the plot to get where it needs to be, right? They needed to have Sydney alone and nobody else around to really make it work. So anyone who's left is going to get it.
I love the way the scene plays too, with the killer having the keys to Dewey's truck and like unlocking the doors, randomly around her, and then slowly pushing that trunk up so you can sneak in and try to get her.
I thought that was pretty fun too. And really, where the hell did he get the keys?
Well, he stabbed Dewey.
Just took them?
Presumably probably got him. Well, I mean, yeah, he bends down to get the knife. Why couldn't he get the keys
I suppose.
At that point? So.
Or Dewey dropped the keys. Who knows?
That's also...
We missed a scene, too, in here that's kind of important, and that's where Dewey and Gail heard about a car wreck, and they go to investigate,
right.
And it ends up being Sydney's father's car, who they've been looking for this whole movie because he went missing. He was supposed to be at some conference and never showed up, and he went missing, so they have a suspicion that he may be the killer.
Right. And as it turns out, Billy and Stu have abducted him, cloned his cellular, and are basically pinning all of this on him, or planning to, I should say.
I don't think they cloned his cellular. I think they stole his cellular.
They say that. Like, Stu says some line about cloned the cellular. Cloned Daddy's cellular. And I'm like, could you do that in 1996? I guess. I don't know. CIA's technology's everywhere, guys. It could, there you go. That's probably the truth. Did we have SIM cards in 96? I guess.
I remember my first phone was from a company called VoiceStream, which I think today is T-Mobile. And they had SIM cards. Mm-hmm. That would have been 1997.
I didn't have a cellular phone at this point. I didn't get any kind of cellular technology till 1999, and I got a pager.
Oh, I had a pager in high school.
remember the days though, like the stigma around that, and they even dropped that line earlier in the movie about who needs to be, the only people that need to get in touch with 24 hours a day are doctors and drug dealers. So like, why would you ever need that? And now, like, if I don't have my cell phone with me, I
feel
miss
naked.
so much stuff. We have all of this stuff going down here before everything completely derails, and we get that great scene where Sidney gets Dewey's gun, and Randy and Stu both show up at the door, and it's like, which one is it? Which one? And I love that she is smart enough to go, screw you both, and slams the door in their face. Because at that point, we still don't know who it is. Like, we think it could be Randy still. It's obviously not the principal now because we've seen him killed. It could be Stu. We don't know, right? And I loved her decision there to say no.
She has no clue, so it makes sense for her to do something like that. Absolutely. She's protecting herself. She thinks her boyfriend's dead.
And it's a good way to draw out the last standing red herring to just muddy the waters for that one little bit longer to try to, fool people like me who don't pay attention.
Well, I mean, you got Billy stumbling down the stairs, and he gets the gun from her. He's like, it's all right. And he lets Randy in and then drops that whole Norman Bates line before he shoots him in the shoulder. And I'm like, Billy is a terrible shot. He's got Randy 4 feet away from him, and he can't hit him. And and he hits him in the friggin' arm. I'm like, man, you suck. I know the Beretta 92F is a bit of a gun to try and wield, but it's really accurate, especially at that kind of range. And all they can do is shoot him in the arm.
It's not going to veer off.
Right. Not at 4 feet. It's like the magic bullet happened. But
yeah,
I don't know. I guess it's just a reveal that like he's so cocky that he just shoots and is like, whatever, don't care. Well, the other thing too is like he shoots and then he like rubs his temple with the gun. I'm like, bro, that's going to be a contact burn. That's going to hurt. So I was like, nobody does that, you moron. But anyway, so it's I
works
know
better with the safety off.
Yeah, we get that a little bit later, right? So, wasn't that a joke in one of the Die Hard movies too? That like Jeremy Irons shoots Samuel L. Jackson, like, it works better when the safety's not on, or whatever. When he's got it point blank, I seem to remember that.
If it's Samuel L. Jackson, that's what, the third one or fourth one? Yeah, don't watch that
somewhere.
Shit.
I don't know. It's not the one. It's not the one in DC with the planes. It's the one where they're running around New York or something. So I guess that's the third one. So the fourth one, yeah, okay, because the fourth one's when Bruce Willis like skateboards.
The fourth one is not even worth
talking
about. Just be quiet.
Yeah,
don't ruin it.
So, but yeah. I love the reveal here, though, from Billy, and you get Stu to come in right behind, and he's got the little voice box changer thing, and which I did think that was the coolest thing in the world. I thought, oh, where's that technology? It didn't really exist at that point, but they play it off like it does, and so not really, no, like not commercially. You couldn't get that stuff.
No, not commercially, but you can find it. It existed. Underground.
No, it worked in the films. Yeah. You had to, but it wasn't something you could go buy at your Spencer's. Now you could 2 years later because of
you had to go in the undergrounds, in the criminal sects.
Brian's revealing things here to us, Ron. I think. I don't.
So
you never heard of the black market?
When did Home Alone 2 come out? Because Kevin McAllister had that thing that changed his voice. Didn't it change its voice?
Yeah, but that was like the kid thing. Like this does like sinister.
Home Alone 2 was 1992, by the way.
Yeah, that was
so this is but this is technology that you could get access to. I mean,
I want to tell you what I think this is a riff of is New Year's Evil. Have either of you ever seen that
movie?
Like that. This feels like New Year's, like The Call, right? Like this is the same thing.
I mean, I just think that this was something that you could get easier than we think. In hindsight,
maybe it was. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, I mean, these two losers did get it. You're right.
And like at every mall, there's a little security place that sold like secret pin cameras and like glasses where you could push a button on the sunglasses and you could see behind yourself and crap like that.
Or better yet, you can flip to the back of your Creep Show edition and get your voodoo doll and X-ray glasses and all that other crap.
Do you want to know when the voice coder became in existence? 1932.
Wow, so I'm completely wrong.
1932.
Okay.
They started working on it in 1928. Now, by 1939, they had patents granted.
If this was an Alex Jones show, there would be like expose video of it, and it would be part of the Illuminati and take it over. I love though how they lay out the entire plan, because again, this is actually a James Bond villain trope, but it does happen in horror movies too. You don't get it in the slasher genre so much. Freddy never really told you what he was doing. Jason and Michael don't talk, so everybody has to figure it out. But there's some scene along the way where everybody lays it out. And I love how they lay out their whole plan. And I got to tell you, it's a psycho plan, but there's a logic to it. And I appreciate the fact that there was thought put into how would they pull something like this off. That's completely wrong and batshit crazy, but in their world, it works,
well, I mean,
right?
They pulled a lot of it off. They got pretty far.
I mean, yeah, they got a guy going to prison for the crimes that they committed,
they have the dad locked up and kidnapped.
Right.
He ain't going anywhere. They got his phone, so they've already made it so that they can track the phone. They've already murdered several people. They've got their one target that they need left right there, ready to go. And if they didn't waste the time to tell the whole plot to her and Randy, who is still alive, just shot in the arm, they could have pulled it off.
That's not their mistake. It's not their mistake to tell her the plot. The mistake is to start stabbing each other before they kill her. I'm like, you got ahead of yourself, guys. Like, you kill her and then you stab yourself.
Yeah, that was pretty dumb.
I do have an answer for it, though, and I'm going to just throw this out there as a theory. This is when I think we're confirmed that Billy plans to kill Stu, and so he wants to do this now so he can really injure Stu. Because, let's say, Stu is a foot taller than him, so you better have something on your advantage to take him down. It's like when Joaquin Phoenix stabs Russell Crowe before they do the Gladiator thing. You know, he's got to have some advantage.
No, that makes complete sense to me because he stabs him pretty good.
I think the cool part about this, and I love it, it's Matthew Lillard's face in this is great, is they're laying out the motives or whatever, and when Billy tells Sydney, your whore of a mother, had sex with my father, and that's why my mother abandoned us, and Lillard's got this look on his face like, shit, I didn't know that. Like, he did, like, I wonder, did he not know that as part of the motive? Because the look on his face is, like, holy shit, I didn't know that.
I don't think he really did. And I don't think he really knew the complete motivation behind this whole thing until now. He was just going along for the ride because it was cool.
It definitely reads to me like this is the first Stu's hearing about any of this, which just further reinforces that Billy was the brains all along.
Oh, yeah.
But it definitely makes me think of, like, again, it kind of harkens back to the Giallo movies that I mentioned earlier, because there's always a scene in those where the knife-wielding killer explains his whole motivation behind why he or she has been, carving up lingerie models or whatever. So I think it goes back to pre-slasher foundation, I guess. And it kind of ties in more of that weird kind of homosexual undertones with Billy and Stu's relationship, because they're awful touchy with each other.
Yeah, like this, I've been told by more than one person, and have read into it, that this is a take on Leopold and Loeb. If you guys haven't, know what they're all about. That they killed a kid at random in Chicago in the 1940s, and they were like affluent white boys that had no other reason to do that other than they were in a relationship with each other and they just felt like they could get away with it, basically. And to hear them talk about it, it was just the thing to do, that it plays on a little bit of that, I think. I don't know. People may also be reading into that a little bit. I do think there is good argument to be made that these two had a relationship beyond just somebody manipulating somebody else to do crime. But again, played off by Lillard's hanging off of everything Billy says. And we do know Billy is like this overly sexualized person anyway. That's all he ever talks about is sex until he starts killing people, and then he talks about that. I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise for me that he, played both sides of that coin. That, or I'm flashing forward to Skyfall when you've got what's his name rubbing Daniel Craig's leg, and he's like, "What makes you think it's my first time?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, we revealed something about Bond we never thought of before either." But okay, so I don't know. Okay, Brian, what do you think? I mean, we just laid out our academic theory on the potential homosexual undertone of this film. Do you think it's there, or are we just reading
I don't think it's there, personally. I don't see it. I just think that Lilliard is an idiot, and he just went along with it for fun.
That I can see too. I don't know. The weird affection does play it weird. Maybe that is just his thing to do it is off-putting. I mean, I think there is something about that, particularly in 1996, that really would have made an audience uncomfortable. And I think that's why it still works on that level. But he gets a great line, though, after they've stabbed the crap out of each other and then they get ready to kill Sidney. He goes to get the gun and he's like, Houston problem. And I understand that is totally ad-libbed, and it's hilarious. It still works. That Gale has snuck in and got the gun. And you know what I love about this, though, with Courtney Cox and the gun is she doesn't hold the gun immediately like she's friggin' Dirty Harry. Like she knows what she's doing. That's a huge gun. If either of you ever shot a Beretta 92F, that's a big gun. She is not a big person, so in her hand it looks massive, and she's shaking to death. She doesn't know what she's doing. I like the fact that you think, yes, pick up the gun, but if you don't know what you're doing with it, you just picked up a paperweight.
Definitely.
It is interesting to see people handling guns in movies not immediately expert users of it.
I mean, think about the end of Halloween 2 for a second, Brian. Jamie Lee Curtis picks up a .38 special and drills 2 into Michael Myers' face the first time she ever shoots a gun. right? This is a far contrast to that.
More realistic.
So, as much as Williamson likes this stuff, but that's what I like about it. As much as Williamson likes to reference slasherdom, he at least recognizes that wouldn't work that way. It would be somebody holding a gun that didn't know what they were doing. And indeed, she doesn't have the safety off, so she doesn't know what she's doing.
That's helpful.
So, yeah, but it gives Sidney time to get away. And my favorite part of this is when Sidney calls Stu and Billy and just lays into both of them, like, who just called the cops on your ass, and so Mama's boy and all this stuff. I mean, it's thick in there, some of the stuff she's throwing at him, and I'm already like Sidney because beyond being obvious final girl, she's proven herself to be pretty tough chick at this point. Like, we've seen her beat the crap out of one of these guys earlier, and she's fairly resilient in the midst of all this stuff. And I like that she's smart enough to discombobulate them even further by the phone
I think
call.
It's smart as well. I mean, it definitely throws them off their game. She needs to do something to help her make her get away, right? Or whatever she's going to end up doing. But definitely, they aren't expecting her to fight back, I don't think. I mean, I think they're expecting this to go easy from here on out. And the fact that she keeps throwing them for a loop, or Gale shows up and throws them for a loop, and Randy shows up, throws them for a loop, all this stuff is kind of pissing them off.
Well, let me ask you guys this, and Ron, I'll start with you on it. Do we need to see Sidney kill these two guys, or would you have been satisfied had she held them at bay until the cavalry showed up to take them into custody?
Well, I think that's part of what makes the movie work, is that they are very meticulous about not going for the obvious sequel setup. Because, I mean, one of them could have lived or whatever. They could have seen, the ambulance speeding away with one of them on a gurney, and then, you've got your instant sequel. And weirdly enough, or smartly enough, they don't go for the obvious, one of Billy and Stu live, escape from jail or whatever kind of thing.
Or the fact that, they're very manipulative people. People think she's kind of psycho girl here who's had a lot of trauma in her life. Who are you going to believe on the stand if they turn against her or all that? So there's a possibility remotely that she doesn't seem like a credible person to put him away.
Well, yeah, because at this point,
Correct.
she was the star witness who put the wrong guy on death row.
And she would be the star witness
any good
to
defense
then
attorney's
get him
gonna be like,
out
"Do you
and
really
put
wanna
these guys
believe
in the place."
Sidney Prescott? Right, which again, a good defense attorney, Johnny Cochran, would be like, "This woman's word does not fit. You must acquit." I mean, really, like that would happen at the trial. But we're not going to get that because she stabs him with a friggin' umbrella, which I'm like, ouch. First, because that is awful, which is, because in one of his wounds. And the one part of it that feels a little false to me is that Sidney put the outfit on. And we haven't talked anything about the Ghostface Killer outfit and, how generic it really is and stuff. That's one of the reasons I think it works.
I have one.
Because it is so generic and it was something you could literally buy at a 5 and dime around the corner from you. You have one? See? So the fact that she puts that on, though, I'm like, I get you get the voice
it
thing.
does
and
feel
you call
weird.
Him back. Like, why would
it almost
you put
makes
the
you think, well,
costume
maybe
on?
she was
that
part of
feels
this the
weird.
whole time.
I mean, that would be an interesting wrinkle, but I think it just feels like a movie decision.
It could be that she does it to kind of make herself not afraid anymore of the outfit.
Yeah.
So she puts it on, says, "Hey, it's not that bad."
Or maybe to like further,
thing.
or maybe to like further take them by surprise, kind of keep them from trying to stab her instantly.
I guess so. I mean, not to know which one had what going. Yeah, I guess that at that point would work. Though I don't think either one of them would confuse her in the outfit for either of them, because as not large as Skeet Ulrich isn't, he's still bigger than her, like by a lot. So anyway, whatever. It's one of those things that I'm like, I think you made the right point, Brian. It's the empowering moment. It's Jenny putting on, Mama Voorhees' sweater, Ron, at the end of Friday the 13th 2. It's the daughter grabbing Freddy's glove and stabbing him with it, and Freddy's dead, Brian. I think that's, it's her getting over her fears of this, right? So, and it works. I mean, she does shoot him, and he goes down, and there's no doubt. She puts another one right in his head. Before we talk about Billy's death, though, how about Stu, man? I love the fact that the little moment at the end of it is, she's like in your dreams, because he's giving her this whole like rapey vibe, like, oh, is it this thing for you? And she throws the TV on him, and his last sound is it's a Shaggy, which I love. It's funny.
How to go by TV, huh? Would that be a great way to go?
I know.
Ugh.
Well, it's a fun callback to Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Well, see, and
Nightmare on Elm Street 2, is it? 3?
3.
Yeah.
Three, yeah. Welcome to prime time. Yeah, no, the Henry. I totally forgotten that, Ron. That's a good callback. So yeah, it feels like that. But then the shooting at the end. I mean, she puts one in his body, and then Randy's giving his rules again. This is where the killer comes back for one more scare. And sure enough, he pops up, and she puts one right in his head. And I'm like, well, at least we know that at point blank range, Sidney's much better than he was. So. Yeah, so she's got a chance. And so, but I'm like, man, for this girl to be as traumatized as she was by the death of her mother and finding all of that carnage and stuff like that, like, she blows somebody away at the end of this. And like, we don't see her in the end. We just see Gail with a camera crew. Like, I'm like, I need her like being comforted by the cops. Because we see Dewey's not actually dead, so they give us that. But I'm like, what would that be like for this girl? As much as empowerment as this is, that she took control and killed the killers, she should just shoot somebody in the face.
I'm kind of surprised she didn't like
not really
hop into a Jeep and drive to Mexico. Go full. I mean,
wait for the
throw in some other references
Cyberdyne
while
to
we're
click
here,
over.
you know?
Is that it? Might as well. We pretty much everything else. Or she could do like a journal, and she does a Sulaco recording for the Nostromo recording Ripley does with a cat. I mean, we could do that. I don't think Williamson was a fan of that though, or not as big a fan as he was like Halloween and stuff like that. So
here's
but she doesn't lay in the floor crumpled going, "Was that
has
the
put the wrong guy in jail?" She's been dealing with the death of her mother for over a year now. She's got all this crap going on. Someone's out to kill her. She finds out that not only her boyfriend is one of the killers, but he's one of the people who killed her mom as well. Also, she finds out, well, and the mom was raped too, so gross. She also has just had sex with this guy. So she's probably a little pissed off right now. And this is her finality of the whole situation, is just pop him down.
I guess so. That's a good way to say it. You know what she comes off as, honestly? She's Nancy at the end of the first Nightmare movie. When
Don't
she
bring that
rainbows up
lame
and it's like,
ending
I take
back
back all the
up.
power I gave you. Like she does come off.
I'm going to turn my
like
back
Nancy
on
there.
you.
But that, I mean, again, it's a reference to a horror movie.
Well, she
But
turns her
isn't that
back
what
on
happens?
and then turns around.
I mean,
and shoots
it's
him,
a little
so-
more violent, but that's the same thing. It's the same. Well, it's the same emotion is what I'm trying to say. Help me out, Ron. Am I crazy or what? Because Craven he didn't write any of the script, okay? He'll tell you now, this is all Kevin's stuff. But to think he didn't have hands in some of this and some of if we're going to call back to John Carpenter's movies so many times.
Yeah, just to think that
you're
Kevin
gonna throw me a
Williamson
bone.
wasn't going to do that anyway.
Nightmare. I'm pretty
No
sure
matter
that,
who was going to, I mean, he was going to call back to all the 80s movies. I don't think it was something that Wes Craven had to add. Now, Wes Craven might have provided the red and green Christmas sweater that he was wearing in his cameo. Yeah. I missed who it was the when I
Yes,
rewatched
Fred the
it for the
janitor? I love
podcast
that.
because I was too busy looking at the handlebar mustache he's wearing.
Yeah, it's a good disguise there. So as Principal Henry's talking about, you bunch of cowards, or what'd you say to me? So it's another reason you hate to see Principal Henry go down. But
Live
Gail
in
gets her
police
big
scene.
story here at the end. I mean, she's beat to hell, but she's going to go on camera anyway. And I love how she's like tried to clean up some of the blood. Oh yeah, because she ain't losing this story, man. I mean, this would be Nancy Grace, right? This is Geraldo. This is what they do. Well, I mean, yeah, it's an immediate crew. Like all
I'm
I
sure
could
that
think was
once
she
everyone,
grabbed
once
local
the cops
news
knew,
crew and
these,
said, "Do you
these
want to be
news
famous?
people,
Come with me."
they listened
Like,
to the
that's-
police scanners all
yeah.
day. Once they knew it was there, they probably sent someone down.
I mean, clearly, there's lots of things to explain here. So, but they do leave us on that hang of, all of this goes down at this remote, farmhouse out here in the hills, and what's to become. And there wasn't an idea for a sequel. This was a one-shot deal, and then we ride off into the 90s rock sunset. We didn't talk about the soundtrack on this, any of you guys. I think the second film is a little more iconic for that, but there was a lot of music in this that can only exist in this time frame. Like
this was
it felt very much like my freshman year of college,
this was a
although-
popular soundtrack in my high school.
That's how.
Alice Cooper.
I mean, you got what? There's a little collective
Nick Cave
soul
and the
on this
Bad
one.
Seeds,
Is
who I
Creed make an appearance here?
despise,
I can't
by the
remember
way.
all of it off the top of my head. Alice
The Red
Cooper.
Right
yeah, you got
Hand.
Schools Out.
Mhm.
I don't even
I
know who
hate
that
Nick Cave.
is.
So let me tell you
Wow.
a story.
Is that
I went to
that
Lollapalooza
song? Okay,
back in
you don't like that
90
song?
4, maybe 5, somewhere around there. The Smashing Pumpkins, the Beastie Boys were on this one, and Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds were on it. And he came out and was completely annihilated, drunk, piss drunk. And I thought he was trying to like pretend he was Jim Morrison of the Doors the whole time because he was drunk. No, that's his gimmick. He tries to sound like Jim Morrison of the Doors, and he sucks. And I'm sorry if there's any Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds fans. I think he's terrible. Well, you enjoy that one.
But
I'll
I
just
like
go over
the
here and not
song.
listen
The
to
Red
it.
Right Hand song is sinister. It's pretty good.
It's terrible.
It falls throughout the entire series.
I'm not a
That's the
huge
thing.
Nick Cave fan.
Okay,
but I
Ron,
do
you're
like
the
Red Right
deciding
Hand.
vote here. What do you
So,
say?
and I like the way they use it in the movie. So, sorry, I'm gonna go with Jay on this one.
Do you?
There's a good cover version of "Don't Fear the Reaper" that's in the
It's good
Billy
enough the
City
first
scene
time
early in when he sneaks in the bedroom too. That's like the no. In this case,
It was
it works.
That's
because it's like
Reaper
the
Unplugged.
melodramatic version versus the it doesn't have.
You know who
the
else
cowbell,
is on the
which
soundtrack?
makes it a different thing.
Freaking Moby.
Yeah.
Moby. Ugh.
Moby. Remember that? Nothing says the late 90s like Moby, right? So he's all over the Bourne movies too, though, so I can't really knock it because I do dig that Bourne tune. But anyway, so well, guys, we're at the point of the
I'm going with
podcast.
Large
Obviously,
Popcorn.
we're time to get final thoughts.
Liked it
popcorn
back
rating.
then.
So
I've
what
watched
are
it several
yours for
times.
Scream,
I
Brian?
liked it now. I haven't watched it probably in about good 5 years or so that I forgot who the killers were when I watched it again for this. So it was really cool and fun to watch the whole thing come down because I kept trying to think about who ended up doing it. Now, my wife told me it was the boyfriend right away, and I'm like, no, I don't think it was this one.
I'm definitely going to go Large Popcorn. I wasn't a big fan of it when it came out. I
Ron?
watched it and I was like, oh, that's okay. I like that Nick Cave song, which I knew from the X-Files soundtrack. Songs in the Key of X, the X-Files album. Because I'm a friggin'... Yes, that's a television show.
That's the television show, right? Not one of those bad movies.
This
like
is the
Fight
first
the
time I've
Future.
watched it probably since the 90s. And I found myself really enjoying it. I love the opening scene with Drew Barrymore. I love the doggy door kill. And I really like how Marco Beltrami stole big chunks of like the Psycho soundtrack and the John Carpenter soundtrack for Halloween and kind of incorporated it into the music that was already in the movie. So yeah, definitely Large Popcorn, and definitely it was a nice trip down 1996 memory lane.
There is a bit of nostalgia with this for me because of when I saw it. Again, that that formative time right there at the end of high school, first to college. I had fallen out of love with slasher movies, but then this one reignited it for me again because I really dug it at the time. I wasn't like over the moon about it, but I thought, man, this is really smart and it's fun, and it became the template for how things were going to go for a long time in film. I didn't see that at the time that it was going to happen, but it's hard to not know that now. And it had been a while since I watched it again, but I found myself even knowing the plot twist of it. I don't think I could ever forget it. It's still fun to watch and see it unfold because I think the performances work. I think the script's tight, and I think it may be the best thing Craven ever directed. I'm gonna make some people mad with that, but I really think it may be his best effort. It's a smart little fun film, and it's not perfect by any means, but it's not meant to be. It's the modern version of what's already been, but it was the modern version at the time. It's not anymore. It's 20 years old, but it still works to be that old and to be a whodunit that once it's spoiled, you can never put that cat back in the bag, but I still think it works. So I'm going Large Popcorn too. I think that's 3 for 3 on this one. I remember, though, after this started making a lot of money, I was hip enough to realize that there's going to be a sequel. I don't care if they set it up or not. There's going to be a sequel. And sure enough, they got one out fast. And we'll talk about that next time. But I have distinct memories of Scream 2 and going to see it in theaters and stuff. So lots more fun to get into as we go. And I'm sad to say, Brian, you're going to hear that Nick Cave song a lot more. So, just prepare yourselves. So anyway, well, folks, thanks for joining us in this latest edition of Film Strip. Of course, you can find all of our old episodes on the iTunes feed and also on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Hook up with us on Facebook, follow us on social media, Twitter and such, and let us know what you think of the show. We appreciate the support. Until next time, for Brian and Ron, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Scream on Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.